UN mechanisms and other mechanisms, in addition to civil society organizations, to take immediate actions to protect human rights defenders online. So we wanted through this event to send a strong and clear message that the human rights defenders are not alone in the face of the ongoing sophisticated digital attacks initiated by oppressive governments across the MENA regions, which are aimed at targeting their peaceful and legitimate human rights work. Now, let me, due to the limited time that we have, only 1 hour, let me introduce our distinguished speakers. With us, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders, Mary Lawlor. She is from Ireland. She spent her life defending defenders from the 5 continents. On occasions, she saved their lives and supported them all the time. And also we have with us human rights lawyer, Hala Ahed Deeb. She's a human rights lawyer from Jordan, who her accounts were hacked into using Pegasus spyware. Also with us, Mohammed Al-Maskati from Bahrain, an IT expert at Frontline Defenders, who put endless efforts in recent years to support human rights defenders online. And then we have with us Marwa Fatafta from Palestine. Marwa leads Access Now's work on digital rights in the MENA region as the MENA policy manager. I have to say that she is also coordinating the work of the MENA coalition to combat surveillance. And also we have with us Iness Ben Guirat, a human rights activist from Tunis and a PhD student. Iness will talk about the contribution of academia and private sector to the enhancement of the protection of human rights defenders online. So all what we want to say in this side event is that human rights defenders should be protected in this digital age. I stop here to hand over to the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders. Please, Mary.
Thank you very much, Khalid, and hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to speak here today. As you know, I've been Special Rapporteur for almost 2 years, but this year was the first time that I was able to go to speak in person at the Council. We've all moved so much online now that it has become normal. But what's also become more common is a new wave of digital attacks. Let's be clear, I've been doing this work for a very long time and probably before a lot of you were born. And surveillance of human rights defenders isn't anything new. What is new is the method. We've always had defenders being followed, their phones tapped, their cars and houses bugged. But we are so reliant on our mobile phones now that defenders have become vulnerable in a new way. Let me also say that while this is unnerving, even frightening, I also take great comfort in knowing the technical expertise we have on our side, as you know. We have some of the most expert people in the world, like Mohammed, tracking and exposing the Pegasus attacks. Citizen Lab, Amnesty International, Frontline Defenders, Access Now, and others have all outlined what amounts to a pattern of attacks on human rights defenders in the Middle East and elsewhere. Some of you will know that in October 2021, the Israeli authorities designated 6 Palestinian civil society organizations as terrorist organizations under Israel's Anti-Terrorism Law 2016. The groups were Adamir, Al-Haq, Defense for Children Palestine, the Union of Agricultural Work Committees, Bisan Center for Research and Development, and the Union of Palestinian Women Committees. Mohammed Al-Maskati of Frontline Defenders conducted technical investigations of some of the phones used by human rights defenders at the NGOs and found that 6 devices were hacked with the same Pegasus spyware, findings confirmed by Citizen Lab and Amnesty International Security Lab. And since then, there have been further revelations from the region. When another investigation led by Frontline Defenders working with other NGOs revealed the hacking of 2 women human rights defenders from Bahrain and Jordan with Pegasus spyware. Bahraini defender Ibtizam Al-Sai has explained how it feels to be hacked. She said, "Personal freedoms are over for me. They no longer exist. I am not safe at home, on the street, or anywhere. I am constantly anxious and afraid that I have put others at risk because of their contact with me, and also that I have put my family in a bad position." Frontline Defenders researchers found her iPhone had been hacked at least 8 times between August and November 2019 with Pegasus, NSO Group's Pegasus spyware. Others hacked with the spyware included the late wonderful Emirati Hala Ahed Deeb, who was part of the team, my team, supporting human rights defenders. And I just want to say here and now, I know that some of you, especially Khalid, have known her and what a great person she was. We miss her. She told us about living with the knowledge that her devices had been hacked. And the impact on targeted surveillance on women can be particularly grievous given that political, societal, and gender power asymmetries often grant authorities opportunities to weaponize information they extract through defamation, blackmail, and doxing. This can include publishing of private and intimate photos and conversations online. These Pegasus attacks can no longer be seen as isolated incidents, but appear to be part of a wider campaign to target human rights defenders, and not just in the Middle East region. Just last Saturday, I had breakfast with Aminatou Al-Haider from Western Sahara. She too has been attacked by Pegasus and described to me how it impacted her. And this only adds to the ongoing relentless pressure she faces and its severe impact on her children. In September 2021, Access Now, working with other NGOs, reported that 37 devices belonging to journalists and others in Latin America were infected between July 20 and November 21, some over 40 times. In August 21, I joined other UN independent experts calling for a moratorium on the sale of such spyware. We don't know the full scale of such surveillance, but we know that many human rights defenders are living in constant fear of being attacked this way. I'd say to the defenders in this meeting today, we understand and we share your fears of being attacked like this. The exposure of NGOs working with defenders to expose these attacks is really valuable work. It is changing the conversation. You have some of the best people in the world of human rights on your side to support you. And from the side of the mandate, I pledge to continue to do what I can and will not leave you alone. Thank you very much for inviting me here today, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you a lot, Mary. In actual fact, we are very lucky to have you in this position, somebody who knows our problems and put an endless efforts to enhance our protection. And also thank you for mentioning our colleague who passed away last year, Mohammed Al-Sadiq. Now we move to Hala. Hala will talk about the impact of what happened on her life as a woman and also as a woman human rights defender. Hala, please.
Thank you, Khalid, for having me in this side event, and I would like to extend my thank to Mohammed for all the great efforts he's doing with us. Maybe as you all know from the report that revealed by Frontline Defenders and Access Now, I discovered that my phone was hacked on March 222nd. This was shocking, actually.
Sorry, Hala, we don't hear you. Your voice. What is happening? Christina, could you see what is happening with the voice from Hala? Is she muted? Hala, do you hear me? Mohammed, while you are here, could you check what's going on?
I think Hala, she left. She have a problem.
She left?
With her
okay. Maybe she has a technical problem. Then without any delay, we will go to Mohammed himself. Mohammed, the IT expert. Mohammed, your endless effort. So just talk about how we could equip the vendors across the MENA region with knowledge, with tools, what we need to do. Do you think the available support is enough to protect them? So we listen to you now, Mohammed. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Khalid, and happy to be with everyone, especially Hala, Mary, Marwa, and Iness. When we are talking about digital attacks against the human rights defenders, there is a lot of elements that we also want to focus on. That, first of all, the attack is not on the individuals as person, but also the attack on the family of the defenders, the attack on his or her friends and extended family, their colleagues. So the attack's wider than we think. Maybe we explain this more on how the attacks is really having huge impact on women human rights defenders, and in our report with Access Now, it is touch base on that part, that how women human rights defenders really and under a huge impact of digital attacks, especially when we are talking about private phones. Most of the human rights defenders now is using their private phones and also in their work, and that's one of the elements that we're trying to educate human rights defenders and trying to supporting human rights defenders to have separating their life with the work, because this is one of the elements that used by attackers, that mixing work and personal life, especially in devices, that increase the impact and increase the risk. And when we're talking about what exactly we want to talk about, tips or digital advice or digital security advice for human rights defenders, I can say that the most important things is how we are behave regarding technology and how our habits regarding technology. This is one of the main important issues that most of the human rights defenders is facing. That it's not only, it's not only having tools to protect yourself, the normal tools that everyone is advised, but also it's important to change our behavior regarding dealing with technology and dealing with informations, and that's the most important things recently. When we look to the small things that we do, and that is wrong behavior, like sharing sensitive information in non-secure way, or sharing sensitive information publicly, or dealing with the sensitive information wrongly. All these is a small things. It could be disaster when that information leaked or that information hacked by someone. And we will look about that all our life actually is in one device. It is the phone. When we look, there is a pictures, there is a videos, there is a communications, there is a financial apps, there is everything in one device. That also let us to understand that it's good to use tools to protect ourselves. It's good to use secure way to protect ourselves, but in the same time, these things it's related also to how we behave to our phones. Do we actually, one of the important elements for Pegasus, when we see that some people get hacked like 20 times or 30 times, it is to understand that the government need to hack you many times if you keep restarting your phone. You just need to shut down your phone, turn it on again and shut it down. If you do this regularly, that the government need to hack you also regularly. Like if they want to keep staying in your phone, so they need to also regularly infect your phone. So you need to understand small things that can helping you, and with the Pegasus, it is a very important things to understand. Pegasus, there is a two-way to infect, not only Pegasus. I think recently there is a lot of companies trying to take this model, is either hack your phone through link that you click on that link, or and take you to a website, downloading Pegasus in your phones and activate it. And this is the old school of infecting phones. And it is, I mean, it didn't end actually, but Pegasus used something more advanced recently, is that they searching for bug in your phone, and in the app or in the operating system, like a secure, I mean, something less secure in the phone, and then infect you without needing to click on any link. And because most of the people also having problem to do updates for their phones, I have a case recently that was hacked last December, even though that iPhone update their phone before December. So that means a lot of human rights defenders, they don't follow the updates. They do it late. I mean, some of them, they take 6 months to do update, and this is also increase the risk against your phone. So in generally, I can advise you in always look on updates. Always remember that you are human rights defenders can be increasing the target on you, especially when you're when there is event of something happening, like a report that you're releasing, or there is event happening in your country, or there is a crackdown happening. So you need to be careful on which link you click and how you deal with information. And I mean, always it's important for us as security researchers or human rights defenders, international organization, to do investigation on these attacks. So please, if you feel that there is something wrong with your phone, don't just format the phone, because formatting the phone, that means also deleting the evidence that we can collect from your phone, and to build something and to understand how the attacks happening. So always share with us this information so we can support you technically and also help you with more details about that type of attacks. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you a lot, Mohammed. Thank you for your endless efforts to support the vendors across the MENA region. Thank you for your availability, and thank you also for all your advices. Now, without any delay, we go back to Hala. We need to hear the impact of attacking on such a defender and woman. Yes, Hala, please. Hala, do you hear me? You could talk if you hear me. Okay. I think we have to go back to my colleague Marwa. It seems there's a big technical problem facing Hala. So Marwa, we will hear you talking about the efforts that NGOs such as Access Now and also the coalition, the MENA coalition to combat civilians. We want to hear from you what else we could do to support human rights defenders online. Marwa, please.
Thank you, Khalid, and hi, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here today together with Mohammed, Mary, Hala, who I hope will be able to speak about her experience, because I think it's extremely valuable to hear directly from victims of surveillance. Access Now, for those who don't know us, we are a global human rights organization. Our mission is to defend human rights in the digital age. And by the virtue of our mission, we have been working since the early days on combating the proliferation of surveillance technologies and providing support for victims of surveillance and human rights defenders who face an array of digital and cyber attacks and threats. Through our helpline, we know firsthand the severe impact of surveillance and cyber threats on human rights defenders and dissidents around the world, and sought to provide rapid response, rapid digital security response and support to those who are impacted. Most recently, our digital security helpline provided technical support to iPhone users who received a security alert or notification from Apple that their device might have been compromised by Pegasus spyware, which is sold by the Israeli company NSO Group. Apple, in this case, proceeded to sue NSO Group for abusing and exploiting its services. And this is a step we highly welcome and encourage tech companies to follow suit, in a step out of many to ensure or to hold tech companies or surveillance companies accountable for facilitating human rights abuses in the MENA region and beyond. In 2020, we also joined such efforts. This time, we and our partners filed an amicus brief before the US Ninth Circuit Court in the US in support of WhatsApp lawsuit over Pegasus-enabled hacks. In 2021, last year, was quite an inventive year following the revelations of the Pegasus project revealed by Amnesty International and a consortium of media organizations. Back then, we joined a civil society campaign calling for the halt of use, sale, and transfer of surveillance technologies until there is an international human rights respecting rules in place. And that echoes a call made earlier by the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression, David Kay, I believe following the murder of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, whose associates, fiance and family members have also been hacked using Pegasus spyware. We also joined 97 civil society organizations at the Human Rights Council 48th session in September, which was held in September last year, urging member states to denounce the use of spyware and surveillance technologies and to mandate independent investigations into the situation of human rights violations facilitated by the sale, export, and use of such technologies. We also called on the US and the EU to sanction NSO Group as a facilitator of human rights abuses and ban such technologies as they are inherently incompatible with human rights. As already mentioned by Mohammed and Mary, we also joined Frontline Defenders earlier this year in exposing the harms and the violence inflicted on women human rights defenders as a result of hacking their phones using malicious spyware technologies. In this case, it was Hala, who was with us on the panel, and another prominent human rights defender from Bahrain. And here I want to highlight something that Mary already mentioned, as how these victims of surveillance live in a perpetual state of fear after they discovered that their phones or devices have been hacked. And that's not only because surveillance is a violation of an individual's privacy, but it's also linked to a myriad of tactics and repressive tools that authoritarian regimes in our region use in order to crack down on political dissent and human rights activism. In this case, unfortunately, victims not only don't have mechanisms for redress and to seek protection, whether it be legal or social, but their very private information and personal information extracted from those devices can be used against them as evidence. And we've had also cases in the past, for instance, in Bahrain, where Cellbrite, also another tool manufactured by an Israeli company called Cellbrite, which sells this forensics extraction tool that allows law enforcement to unlock phones and other devices, even if they're protected by passwords. This evidence that was extracted has been used to sentence a human rights defender in Bahrain, I think, to 10 years in jail. So the evidence that is extracted can be weaponized against you. It's like a ticking bomb. It can be used today, it can be used tomorrow, it can be used in 10 years, as long as the authorities have hold of this information. Phenomena like online harassment of women human rights defenders, doxing of women human rights defenders, which means you're publicly leaking private information such as someone's ID, copy of their ID, their home address. In some instances, we've seen even the addresses of an activist's child's kindergarten. All of those tactics, their number one aim is to intimidate activists into silence. And as I said, there are no legal remedies for victims or to hold the perpetrators, whether it be the private companies who are providing these surveillance technologies or the governments who are using these tools, accountable. And that's why, as we are holding this current session on the side of the Human Rights Council session, it's really important to remind member states of their obligations to protect and promote human rights, including the right to privacy against unlawful surveillance. And this is particularly important as in international accountability. It's important for regions like the MENA region, where there are no independent oversight bodies, there are no independent judiciary, there are no legal or social remedies for victims to ensure that victims of surveillance can seek justice and redress. Actually, to make matters worse, surveillance technologies have made governments in the region expand their repression beyond their territories. A phenomenon that has been on the rise, not only in our region, but around the globe, called transnational repression. Many of the victims of surveillance technologies in our region are activists who are in exile, seeking a safe haven to be able to continue their human rights activism and political dissent. And unfortunately, the proliferation of such surveillance technologies enable governments to attack those who are under their authority, but also those who live away, hoping for physical safety. One of the sad reality that is inflicted upon human rights defenders, but also especially women human rights defenders. Hala Ahed Deeb was mentioned during this panel, and I here want to bring up a quote from one of her friends who, unfortunately, before her death, said that when she knew that her device was hacked using Pegasus, she was even afraid to get close to the metro tracks because she was afraid of being pushed. And this brings or emphasizes the point made earlier by Mohammed, is that violence and the violation of someone's privacy is often linked to other human rights abuses. It has a chilling effect on freedom of expression, on freedom of movement, especially of women who are afraid over their physical safety, agency, and integrity. It's an attack on someone's dignity. And again, before closing my remarks today, I think it's really high time for governments who have the #1 responsibility to protect people's rights, including the right to privacy, to take urgent action against the proliferation of such surveillance technologies and ensure that whatever mechanisms, national, regional, or international, ensure there is accountability and justice for victims who are impacted by such technologies. And thank you.
Thank you a lot, Marwa. And I know that the coalition, the MENA coalition to combat surveillance at this stage is doing mapping for the Western companies that are supporting oppressive governments in the MENA. And this is a very important stage. And hopefully with your work and with the work of others, we will manage to have a significant change in the environment to make it more healthy to the work of human rights defenders in our region. Now, we just move back to Hala. Hala, do you hear me? See if you are muted. Yes, Hala.
Yes, thank you. And sorry, I had technical issues. Where to start? As a human rights defender, myself and our colleagues, our spaces are shrinked in the region and very limited to work as a human rights defenders. Restrictive legislation, prosecuting, and now using Pegasus or civilians as a tools to also to limit our space. This is put a pressure in our shoulders how to work and to because this civilians is not affect our lives, but also it's affect the people who work with us. For example, looking at human privacy, our privacy when it's violated, we feel that we have nothing to hide, but also we don't feel that we are safe anymore. The people looking at us that we are human rights defenders, so they came to us to help them, but now we feel that now we are hopeless. We couldn't help them because we couldn't help ourselves. Even when we attacked by Pegasus,
Hala, again, we can't hear you. She's not with us, I think, Hala, or she is still with us. Okay, in this case, due to the limited time, I will move to our colleague, human rights activist, and also, okay, Hala, are you back? I'm sorry for this technical problem that you are having. Hopefully it is not a digital attack, hopefully. Hala, do you hear me? Okay, I will go back to Iness. Iness, we want to hear from you about the contribution of academia and the private sector to the protection of the vendors online. Yes, Iness, please go ahead.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Khalid, and for everyone for this beautiful opportunity. I'm going to try to be brief. Hopefully, Hala will be back with us soon. Having worked in academia, specifically in the field of anonymous communication system, I think the role of academia when it comes to privacy enhancing technology is very clear. After all, Tor, Signal, PGP, TLS, they're all results of years of research in different research groups. But I would still like to point out a few challenges, because up to this point, we are still failing when we hear about privacy leaks and cyber attacks and phones of activists being targeted and hacked. And there are a few problems that I would like to, maybe we can have a conversation about. Well, first of all, is the problem of funding. When it is clearly not enough to just have some scientific article submitted somewhere in an academic journal. It's in order to have these tools, we need to have programmers, developers, security audits, continuing secure hardware, continuing work that requires funding. And for that, we need to emphasize that privacy is a public good. It is not just a favor that we're doing to one or two people in this world. It is privacy is a human right, and the access to having private life in our life is as equal and important as having access to healthcare or education. The second problem or challenge that I think academia is facing is this continuous disconnection between academia and civil society, or academia and the public sector in general, like the normal people. And this continuous disconnection will result into having tools that maybe they are very secure, maybe they are theoretically amazing, but they are not usable by the majority of people. The famous example is PGP. PGP is great technologically, theoretically, mathematically, but unfortunately for years now, it's still not being used as much as it should be. And I think it's not only unfair, but it's completely wrong to say, oh, human rights defenders are lack the awareness of the importance of encryption, or human rights defenders, they don't have the skills to use PGP. I think it's completely wrong. I think human rights defenders, they have more worries in their life than to just care, oh, did I upload my public key or my private key? Is this email being like really encrypted? And to do this for every email, for every day, for the rest of their life. And this continuous disconnection between the civil society and academia will still be emphasized, especially now with COVID and the restriction on travel and restriction on access to conferences, and the fact that most research institutes are in the West that require visa for even people to join and have the conversation. And after usability comes the problem of deployment at large scale. So even though currently we have some simple tools that they are very secure and private and very usable, like Signal, for example, we're still, studies have shown that human rights defenders, even those that come from very high risk environment, that they are very aware, that they are very skilled into using these private tools, they still use from time to time other means of communication. And the reason is because they have families and friends that maybe they are not using this, and then will put them into risk. And But it's important also to note that it's not just the fact that they are using from time to time non-secure means of communication. It's also one thing that activists don't want to have on the first place is being immediately under the spot of the government for just downloading Tor, for just downloading Signal, for just using it from one to time, oh, you're an activist. But the problem is we see this narrative of privacy enhancing technologies. Either they are used by criminals who are trying to do some criminal activity on the internet, or by human rights defenders that, to be honest, the majority of the people in normal life, they don't think about on a daily basis. And I think we should change this narrative from a very individualistic approach that, oh, maybe I'm not threatened, so I don't feel the need to use Signal, to actually becoming a moral and collective responsibility to have these tools, especially that in our region, the MENA region, we're not innocent until found guilty. We're all guilty until found innocent. And even then, it is still unclear. I would like to finish by quoting Virginia Woolf, who's a very important writer in the 20th century, and who said, for most of history, anonymous was a woman. For a very long time, women have submitted their work into either novel or poetry or piece of theater as anonymous, because women were not taken seriously, because women, whenever they publish their work, there will be a lot of question into the connection between the fiction of their work and their personal life. And having access to private life, to having access to anonymous communication channels to communicate between each other was very important for them. And it goes way back in history for us. And I think it's very important to get that right back, especially that now a lot of quote unquote technological advancement kind of ruined the possibility of having a means of communicating between each other in a private and anonymous way.
Thank you a lot, Iness. We fully appreciate your efforts to create anonymous tools to support citizens, including online activists. Thank you so much. Now, I just want to check Hala. Hala, are you available to talk about your experience? Do you hear me? Hala, are you here? If you hear me, just continue to talk about your experience. I can't see Hala with us. So I think we will just see if there are any questions. Do we have any questions? You could put your question in the chat box. If there is no any question, I go back to our panelists for their final say. So back to you, Mary. What is your final say? Do you want to recommend something or to suggest something for us? Yes, Mary, please.
Well, Khalid and panel, I mean, I am very aware of the damage that is done to human rights defenders, their friends and families, particularly when they are attacked by spyware. And it increases the strain and the pressure and the insecurity that they face day in, day out anyway. So from the side of the mandate, I think my tools are raising with governments the issue. And even in my remarks to the Human Rights Council last Friday, in response to a question, I think it was from the States, I mentioned the effect of Pegasus, the fact that Pegasus was being used on human rights defenders and the impact it was having. So, I mean, I'm happy to keep talking to states, to keep raising the issue and hoping that maybe some of it won't fall on deaf ears.
Thank you a lot, Miriam. Mohammed, please, your final say.
I think we need to cooperate, all the human rights defenders, all the human rights organizations. I think I can really mention that cooperation between frontline defenders and Access Now and Gulf Centers and other organizations, it's really helping the human rights defenders, and it is important to see more of these cooperations because, I mean, one hand cannot work well. I think we need to work together to be against that domain. Spyware it will not stop. We will see more spywares happening. There is, if you remember, there was a hacking team, the company in Italy. It's closed. Like after all these years, it's closed now, and that's actually succeed from the human rights organization who work together to fight that company. I think we need to do the same. We need to work more on this, and we want really to work together to expose all these human rights violations and to work with the human rights defenders to raise awareness about digital attacks. It will not end, Khalid. This is not end of the story. It will be have a new spywares, a new company. I know that Mary is working hard on the international level. We are working hard on the technical side, but we need to keep this fight on. And I think that's what future steps. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohammed. I can't agree with you more. Yes, Marwa, your final say, please.
Thank you, Khalid. I like very much the quote shared by Iness on anonymity, and it reminds me that we're actually fighting two fights that are separate but interlinked. One is fighting the proliferation of surveillance and spyware tech, promoted and sold by private companies, many of which we actually don't know. Of course, NSO Group has been making the headlines recently in the past few years, but this is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's important to remember that there are many actors in this field that we don't know of, selling technologies we're not aware of. At the same time, there's also many efforts by governments and member states to undermine encryption and end-to-end encrypted tools. And it's really important as civil society organizations and privacy experts to advocate for the importance of such tools for human rights work and for human rights defenders. Many of those tools, unfortunately, are criminalized in different parts of the world, including in different jurisdictions in the MENA region, where the mere existence of an end-to-end encrypted app like Signal is sufficient to hold you, to imprison you or detain you or charge you with some bogus charges like trying to incite a coup against their regime, as was the case in Turkey a few years ago. This is to say, indeed, I want to emphasize on the point that Mohammed mentioned, collective efforts to expose those companies is needed among civil society organizations, those who have the technical expertise, advocacy expertise, to ensure that they are held accountable. The mapping exercise that we're doing as part of the MENA Surveillance Coalition is one step, but much more is needed from civil society organizations and also media organizations in the region. There's a lot to be done. And also, I think we need to think of creative ways where we can provide justice and redress for victims of surveillance, especially those who come from our region, where there are no means whatsoever to challenge the authorities or seek redress through illegal mechanisms. How can we use international human rights mechanisms, universal jurisdiction, support from other governments where an individual might be based or resident to ensure there is transparency, accountability, and justice to those affected. And thank you very much again for holding this space and this panel.
Thank you, Marwa. And really, you talk about accountability and the fact that we don't have any local remedies. We need just to use the concept of international jurisdiction. We and others like Reporters Without Borders, we have made cases before the judiciary in France, and we could make similar cases in other foreign judiciaries. Again, as NSO and other, it's not just about NSO, there are others, as you know. Now we go to Iness. Iness, maybe you talk about your anonymous tools, when we will have them in work. Yes.
I mean, unfortunately, there has been a lot of trial of having anonymous communication, namely Mixminion. Tor is just another version of a mixnet-based system. But then again, the problem of this disconnection between what the public needs and like what we think as academia in like different research institutes in the West, what is very useful is none of these tools have been deployed at a large scale because of the lack of the reachability, because of the lack of the impossibility to use these tools. And because most people, they just simply, we didn't hear about. But so this is why I want to continue. I want to emphasize one more time, even though Mohammed and Marwa and Mary talked about this collaboration, the importance of collaboration. And I would just quote one really famous paper in the field of anonymous communication that it's really, I like it, even though it's very theoretical, but the name is very telling. It's Anonymity Loves Company. We cannot be anonymous by ourselves. We need the crowd. If today we go to a street and we see protests and only one person is wearing a mask, I think we all agree that like it's very easy to identify that person. But if we all agree, human rights defenders, normal people, my parents, your parents, everyone in the chat today, we all agree that the importance of having privacy enhancing technology, not only for like some people who are being constantly threatened by certain dictator regime, but for everyone, because it's a human right that we all need. I think we can reach that level. And thank you.
Thank you a lot, Iness. I have to thank our distinguished speakers, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders, Mary Lawlor, also human rights lawyer Hala Ahed. I am sorry that she faced a technical problem. Unfortunately, I have to thank our IT expert, Mohammed Maskati, and also my colleague Marwa Fatafta, and also my colleague Iness Ben Guirat. Thank you all. And the last say that we have here is we will continue posting the capacity of human rights defenders online, which is crucial, as we all agree, to freedom as a whole and human rights recognition in the MENA region. And also, we want to say that digital authoritarianism in the MENA region should be ended now. With that, I would like to thank you all. I know we have a few minutes left, but I think we met our objectives. Thank you so much. I wish you a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Khalid.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.